Let's begin our afternoon with a word of prayer, please. Gracious Father, we thank you for this day. You bless us, and you are with us, and you are here with us now, and we thank you for that blessing. Thank you for the gift of each other and for the chance to work together here in this corner of your kingdom, wherever this corner might be at this moment, but to be connected to colleagues and coworkers who are part of the same compelling mission that you have entrusted to all of us. Bless us, Lord, also with the gift of communication, so that as we interact together, the body of Christ in this place might work together and understand the various parts and functions where that's important, and to be able to move forward together in the assurance of your presence, the gift of your Spirit, and your guiding direction in our lives. We thank you, Lord, too, for the students, above all, for the students who are the focus of our mission, and many of them already have returned to campus as our traditional students. Of course, our non-traditional students still coming on a regular basis. But these students are really the focus of our ministry, and we thank you for the opportunity that you give us to help them to develop in their minds, their bodies, their spirit, for service to you, Lord Jesus, in your church and in your world, and help us to keep that mission focus in our lives as we carry out all that you've asked us to do. So bless us now in this time together, we pray for Jesus' sake. Amen. So thanks Kim, Pam, for helping to organize this. A year ago, we made an attempt at this with our colleagues at Ann Arbor, but we had our dates mixed up, and so not everybody showed up that day. And this year, I think we were doubly, triply sure that everybody had the right time. But I appreciate your bringing us all together for a chance to interact. There are a few faculty colleagues who are here, and part of the reason for this pondering, which I hope is not too ponderous, but nevertheless is a chance to revisit, or in the case of some years, to visit ahead of the faculty retreat, some of the themes that I share with the faculty, so that we're all kind of on the same page. And I think that those who've been to these or to the faculty retreats through the years know that they don't have there's not a lot of specifics, here's this, here's that kind of stuff, as much as more general themes, because I want to be responsive to what interests you partly, and also because I don't know half of what's going on around here. So, but seriously, you may have questions about certain specific things you've heard about or that you'd like to know more about, and there are other administrators here, other colleagues here who might be able to answer questions that I can't. So don't hesitate to ask about anything that interests you as we get toward the end of this presentation. You might know this story already, but I think it's a really an intriguing one. And if you haven't heard it, I think you will be intrigued. But every year, our campus ministry teams select a passage and a theme that really help to guide us in our reflection in chapel and other moments, often opening service of the school year or graduation or what have you, other points along the way. And there was some thought given by Kim and Steve and Darcy here and Ryan and Bob and Ann Arbor, and some thought given to the possibility of just requiring common verse and theme. I mean, we're one university, let's have one theme, one verse. And yet, it's very important that we maintain certain traditions on each campus, certain independence where it's appropriate, and you don't want to coerce things that aren't necessary to coerce. And so the decision was made to allow the students to simply pick their own verse and theme. Ryan shared with the faculty, I won't get all of the details straight, but there was some jockeying back and forth, some communication that occurred between Ryan Peterson in Ann Arbor and Kim here on this campus about potential theme verses and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, literally at the end of the day, when both campus ministry groups of students chose, they selected the same verse from Lamentations chapter 3. I mean, it was chosen at one place and presented among a list of potential verses for, I think, the Mequon students to consider after the Ann Arbor students, and it was one that was on the list anyway already at that time. But they chose the same verse. They chose the exact same verse. And it's this passage from Lamentations 3 that will guide us and direct us as we come together this year. Jeremiah the prophet writes, "But I call this to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They're new every morning. Great is your faithfulness." It's obviously a wonderful verse. It's this loaded with promises and wonderful themes that we can build on. We've kind of broken this down, and we'll do more so, I suppose, in chapel as we go along. It's an uplifting verse tucked into the midst of the book of Lamentations. Not many lamentations in those words, but surrounding it are prophetic words of concern and Jeremiads, if you will, because of the dismal plight of Israel and the failure of the people, their sin, their idolatry, their impending captivity, the destruction of Jerusalem. I mean, all sorts of things surrounding this. And yet in the midst of that, you have the prophet with these extraordinarily encouraging words of comfort and consolation, and indeed of hope. And hope is really where the themes then for both campuses focused. In Ann Arbor, the theme this year, the history there is kind of these pungent, short themes that are kind of quick hitters. 2 words: renewed hope. And here, a little more prolix, kind of lengthy description: hope in his faithfulness. But whether it's there or whether it's here, hope is the theme for this school year. And it's really that theme that I want to develop with you for just a few moments. Hope. And it's not the kind of, sometimes we use the word in a way that leaves us sort of doubting or uncertain. You know, think about it in your own popular use of the word. Well, I hope this goes okay. In other words, it might not, right? Gee, I hope we have a good year. But it's quite possible that we won't. I don't know for sure. This hope that we're talking about, based on this Lamentations text, though, is based, the prophet says, on the Lord's unceasing love, on his never-ending mercy, on his great faithfulness. So it's not a hope that's left open to question, left to doubt. There is a certainty in this hope. And it's ultimately, I think, summarized in a way for us in a nice maybe companion text from 1 Peter chapter 3. Let me read a couple of verses as the apostle begins his letter. "Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who according to his abundant mercy has begotten us again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible and undefiled that does not fade away, reserved in heaven for you who are kept by the power of God through faith for salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time." So he talks about mercy too, and he talks about living hope, but a hope that finally finds its focus in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Just yesterday, a graduate of ours on Facebook quoted, once in a while I find something useful on Facebook, but quoted Yaroslav Pelikan, the theologian, with, I think, this really compelling, brief statement. If Jesus didn't rise from the dead, nothing else matters. If Jesus did rise from the dead, nothing else matters. The hope of heaven sustains us, though for a while, this side of heaven will be grieved by various trials. Peter goes on, in this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials, so that the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ, whom, having not seen, you love, though now you do not see him, yet believing you rejoice with joy inexpressible and full of glory, receiving the end of your faith, the salvation of your souls. So it is ultimately that hope of heaven that sustains us in the midst of the trials that we experience and is the undergirding bedrock of our hope and our theme for this year. There may be a little, I'm sure, of that other kind of hope. I hope so, or I hope this works well, or I hope this doesn't go wrong, right? We'll still have a fair bit of that. There will be, I can assure you, various trials that grieve us, especially when our hopes are dashed, also known as we don't get our way, right? That will happen invariably. But Jeremiah's hope and Peter's hope is that hope, again, based on steadfast love, unending mercy, the great faithfulness of the Lord, the living hope built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and his righteousness. And that hope, it won't fail. It will not fail. And Jesus is alive, and he is raised from the dead. Because if that's not true, then what we're doing here together is really nothing more than perpetuating a fraud. And we ought not to be doing it. We ought not to be here. We ought not to exist. But if he is raised from the dead, as we confess, then what we do here, everything that we do here, matters to the utmost. What we do, what you do, really matters. And so that's the context for the beginning of a new school year. So what are we doing? We gather each year, I think, to get a view of what's happening from where I sit. And this is more than just a little break for you. Kind of want to know what's going on in my mind and in my office. And I can understand why that might be interesting and necessary. And I'll do my best to update you on a few things that you might like to hear about, and you can ask about others that perhaps you have heard about, want to know more about. But what's happening where you sit and stand and move around, what's happening where you are is usually a much better indicator, in my opinion, of Concordia in action. And we call it inspiration in action. That's our tagline that we like to use. Some days you may not feel especially inspired, and there may be days when you don't think that you yourself are particularly inspiring. And so you might wonder, what does inspiration in action have to do with me? But I think that the emphasis really ought to be for us on the action, on the living out of our various vocations, serving God by serving others. What you do, whether you realize it or not, inspires me, inspires our students. But let's leave the inspiration up to the Lord, right? That's the Spirit working in us, is what the word literally means. Let's leave that to the Lord and trust and know that God is at work here in what you do, in who you are, through you to others. So again, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because that's the real story of Concordia. As ordinary or as mundane as it might seem at times, the truth is, God is at work among us. And what a great privilege it is for us to be a part of God's work here in this place. And God has blessed us in his work among us. Of course, some of those blessings are fairly obvious ones, and I'll talk about them. I like to talk about them, and we need to. But God's blessings are not always measured by growth, by progress, by advancement, by material things. Sometimes, in fact, we refer to them in a backhanded way as hidden blessings. And you know what we mean when we talk about hidden blessings, right? We mean that things they're not always as they appear on the surface. And God himself conceals himself sometimes in various ways. And the blessings that he gives to us sometimes come to us through our struggles, even through our suffering. On the cross, God blessed us, right? Through the suffering and the death of Jesus Christ. And through our crosses, through our challenges, through our difficulties, God will, among other things, draw us to himself. The source of love, steadfast love, of mercy, unending mercy, new to us every day, and of faithfulness, great is his faithfulness. So I don't want to lose sight of that. And sometimes on our campuses, in our culture, in our lives, we think the only way that God blesses us is if things are going great, if we're going forward. Look how God has blessed us. Well, sometimes we have to look at those other blessings that come to us in other ways. One of my favorite Luther quotes is the one where he says, God's caress, his love, his blessing, God's caress leaves wounds. And think of the image of when my children were small and I had didn't shave one day. You kind of draw them close and they walk away with a little rash on their baby skin because I loved them and I wanted to hold them close, right? That's God's caress. It leaves wounds. It doesn't always just move us ahead and move us forward. There will be struggles. And what are your struggles and your crosses right now? I think we like to pretend that we're in control. That's the image that we like to project to each other as much as we can. That we're managing just fine. Everything's hunky-dory, that we're above the fray. But the reality is, everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. Each one of us has deep hurts, has real-life pains, has burdens to bear, wounds, scars that remind us of wounds. And so also do our students. And as we interact with each other, I think it's important for us to keep this in mind. That we're not just dealing with somebody who might be kind of giving us a rough time for no good reason. We might have the opportunity to be the conduit of the Lord's blessing to somebody else. And we are that each day. Somebody else dealing with lamentations. When I think of that book that is the book from which our theme text is chosen, it's hard for me in a way to connect that word, Lamentations, to Concordia. And that's because Concordia has had so little to lament over the course of our collective experience, certainly in my experience at Concordia. Very little to lament. Doesn't mean there haven't been things we'd like to do over if we could, that there haven't been things that have gone wrong. There certainly have been. It doesn't mean everything goes well all the time, but there's so much positive. Larry and I heard a wonderful sermon in church on Sunday from our pastor talking about attitude and how important attitude is to that. So, attitude is in many ways everything. Do you start your day with a bad attitude? Do you start your day with a good attitude? Maybe not right when the alarm goes off. I don't think that's really fair to ask at that point. But as the day goes on, what's your attitude toward what you're experiencing around you? And I shared with the faculty, I tend to be a person, I try to be a person who is a cup is half full person. But when I think about Concordia, I can only think of our cup overflows, because it certainly has overflowed. There are concerns, though, and I shared these with the faculty, and to keep everybody on the same page, I want to just lay out for you what I think are some of the biggest challenges and concerns that we face together as a university. And I won't go into great detail about these, I didn't then either, but I think they're worth mentioning just so that we all have it on the same radar screen. Competition has always been a challenge. It's a challenge for every college and universities. And there's a lot of collaboration among us. That's a good thing. But we're all, frankly, competing, especially for students, to some extent for donor support, for attention. That's nothing new. I don't think it's anything that's any more extraordinary than it's ever been, although it comes from different directions now, perhaps. But that faces every college and every university. But something else that faces all of us now, and I think is really somewhat more concerning, is the public's perception about higher education and what we do. Put fairly succinctly in this question: is college worth it? And if you haven't heard folks asking that question, then well, you perhaps haven't been paying attention to the discussion about higher education, because it's being asked in every corner. Is it even worth it? And related to that, is it too expensive? Is college running too far ahead of the rate of inflation, or what have you? Is affordability, and with affordability, the question of access. Is higher education becoming the private preserve of the elite and the wealthy, leaving others behind without opportunity? And if access is important and affordability is an issue, then maybe we have to find other ways of being efficient, folks are saying. We have to make sure that we're as efficient as possible. And that may mean reducing the amount of time that students have to spend in class, or making sure that they can get their first 2 years online or at a community college, or whatever the case might be. We're challenged by these issues of affordability and access as it pertains to the question of diversity. I, again, shared with the faculty that sometimes parents sitting around the kitchen table, or families sitting around the kitchen table with a college-age student, will not even consider Concordia. Because we're a private school, we must be out of bounds. And it's not just families who have failed to save for college. It's families that have saved. And they're wondering, is Concordia even affordable? And never mind the fact that we have good financial aid that's very supportive for some. In some cases, particularly in the instance of some of our minority populations, we can't offer enough in order to attract that student and to make the college experience one that they can afford. So those are real issues. Those are questions that confront us collectively, not just at Concordia, but at every college and university around the country, but also here at Concordia. So we have to ask ourselves questions about, is college worth it? What is the value proposition of what we offer that makes the Concordia education special enough, distinct enough, important enough that it's worth it to students? And what can we do to be as efficient as possible in order to make sure that it's as affordable as possible? And what can we do to improve access for all students, including students of color? As you know, we're not a very diverse campus. There's really no racial diversity in this room. There wasn't very much at the faculty retreat. I think we're really challenged by that in offering our students the opportunity to have the best possible experience that they can. We talk about wanting our students to be global citizens. In order to achieve that, it's going to be important that they have a better sense of what the whole world looks like and how it interacts. So those are challenges for us. I think another one is our Christian identity. I don't think it's a challenge for us to want to keep it, to want to maintain it, or to be committed to maintaining it. I think the challenge rather is coming from an increasingly hostile culture that's doing all that it can to make this as difficult as possible for us. And again, if you've been paying attention at all, you can see examples of this all around us in our culture. And I've often said, we talk about the culture wars that are going on around us. In some ways, I feel like the Christian church has already lost the culture war. We've lost the culture war. I mean, we're so far behind in it now. The things that go on among us that a generation or so ago would have been absolutely not permitted or not tolerated or not even talked about are now taken as kind of rights of people and society. And this is a tough one. I mean, how do we respond to some of these things that are going on around us? And at the same time, not dilute who we are as a Christian university, not compromise that confession. I don't know what all that means, but I think we'll be asked that question in very serious ways as we go forward. On the other side of that, I think we're also challenged with regard to our Lutheran identity. And interestingly, this challenge comes from within the church, a church that is very concerned about the possibility of the Concordias, not this one in particular, but all of us, seeing some sort of dilution of our Lutheran mission identity. And how can we be sure that first of all, doesn't happen, but then also help our church to appreciate, as we get to see every day, the extraordinary mission that is being fulfilled in this place in and among our students. So I see these as challenges rather than lamentations. I mean, I think they're opportunities that give us a chance to have an impact. But they're real, and they're things to wrestle with. Now, I know that I asked for you the question, what's going on in my office? I realize that some of these are kind of 30,000-foot stuff that don't have much to do with what you're doing day to day. That's why I said where you are is where the action really is. I can just kind of drift off in the clouds and wonder about these far away things. But they do have an impact on us, and they're things that we want to pay attention. So, a couple more things. I did a few lamentations. Let me continue with a few reflections and then a few expectations, and then in 5 or 8 minutes we'll ask some questions. Reflections, first of all, on one university. That's language that we use nowadays. There was never really any question about what that meant before. We were Concordia University, Wisconsin, here on this campus. But now we're being much more intentional about how we describe and define ourselves, largely because of the merger between the Ann Arbor and Wisconsin campuses, but also mindful of our various satellite campuses around the region. So we are one university, Concordia University. Hearts together, Steve Smith often reminds us. That's what the Latin word Concordia means. So we are, in a new way, one university. And in fact, we are, in a very formal way now, one university. That is the formal name of Concordia. We changed it in Madison. It was formerly Concordia University, Wisconsin. Now it's simply Concordia University. That's what's going to appear on the diploma. That's what's going to appear on the transcript. That's what's going to appear in the bills statements that are sent to students. But even as we are one university, we remain 2 residential campuses and a number of satellite campuses as well. And so for marketing purposes, for our public presentation, we continue to be Concordia University Ann Arbor and Concordia University Wisconsin. So we have 2 brands within this one university. And that's a bow of acknowledgement to years of history and tradition. It's a recognition that we're not aiming for some kind of homogenized hybrid of a university. We're not saying that we are Concordia University, Wisconsin, and Ann Arbor is our satellite campus. We're not saying those kinds of things. We continue to reach out to our alumni of both schools. We continue to have colors of both schools represented, athletic teams represented, and so we're still Concordia University, Wisconsin, and we're still Concordia University, Ann Arbor, but we're one Concordia University. Now, if that confuses you, well, that's all right. Welcome to the club. We're all still kind of figuring out how that all works in real life. Kurt Gilo talks about them as tangles that we need to untangle, and the reality is there are fewer of them now than there were a year ago when all of this got started. And there'll be even fewer a year from now as we continue to go forward. One thing is sure, we've come far. we really have come a long ways in this relationship and in this new reality. And from my perspective, the progress has been excellent. There's certainly a lot to be grateful for, and there's still a long way to go, but we're making very fine progress. As I mentioned, this one university theme also extends to our satellite campuses. It always has. And for those of you who are in those places, we are grateful for you. You, in many ways, are kind of on the frontier of Concordia. You're out there representing the university and its mission in various and sundry places in extraordinary ways. And we recognize that this point about competition, it's perhaps nowhere more fierce than it is in our satellite centers, where there's so many choices that people have for those higher ed options. The delivery model is changing. We recognize that. And we will adapt, and we will compete, and we'll continue to move forward. One of the ways in which we're adapting, and we're not alone in this, of course, but one of the ways in which we're adapting is to intensify our online learning initiative. In fact, initiative is not even a good word for it anymore. We're not just starting out here. We've been at it for a while. And this online piece has really extended our mission, and it continues to have capacity for further growth. So for those who are involved in that, and that includes staff, it includes faculty, it includes administration, we continue to expect to see growth in that area in a significant way, but in a way that remains in concert and consistent with our mission, who we are, what we're trying to accomplish. So Concordia is represented in many places, delivered in many different ways, but it's that shared mission commitment that really holds us together. And to return again to the quote I shared with you earlier, if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, nothing else matters. If Jesus did rise from the dead, nothing else matters. So focus. Focus is really very important. This is what we're about. This is what separates us from so many colleges and universities. We're not the church, but we are a Christian university in the Lutheran tradition. And this focus on Jesus Christ, Him crucified, raised from the dead, is really what makes us who we are. So, expectations. Just a couple of points here. I'd like to update you on enrollment. It looks good for the fall for traditional undergraduate enrollment. We'll have a record number of new students here at Concordia University, Wisconsin, 825 new or transferring students to Concordia. We'll have an even higher percentage increase of new students at Concordia Ann Arbor. I think Sarah Holton told us this week that we only have 20 beds available at Concordia as we start this fall. And that's just a year into Chemnitz. So that's pretty remarkable when you think about it. They already have contingency plan for moving into lounges as we've had to do on some busy years. We did not expect to be in that situation this year. And so we've got to start giving some thought to next year, obviously. But that's a wonderful thing. And the fact that we're experiencing growth in non-traditional undergraduate education on both campuses, that we're moving this way, is going against the trend in a region where the demographics would not necessarily suggest that would be true. So that's one of those visible blessings that we're grateful for. We'll continue to get a handle on the non-traditional programs, the graduate programs. It's a little more difficult to gauge those at this time. And again, I think these are now a greater challenge than we faced in the past. There's just so many more colleges and universities engaging in this endeavor, and so we've got to stay ahead of the curve. Regarding projects, facilities, expectations, the Board of Regents has approved a couple of campaign efforts, and you'll be hearing more about these as we go along. The first is a campaign for a new academic building here on the Mequon campus that will become the home for the School of Business. We'll also include program opportunities for the School of Education and classroom space just in general, which is obviously much needed here. We have only 20 beds. We have even less classroom space, according to Steve Montreal, at certain points during the day. We're in the leadership phase of that right now. We sometimes call that the silent phase, but the fact that I'm talking to you about it means it's not all that silent. But anyway, so what we're trying to do is generate the bulk of the support from our key donors and board members to help us to move forward with that project. And we should be able to get through that phase by the end of this calendar year, and hopefully not too long after that, announce more publicly the plan, the drawings, and so forth. We're just now starting to work with architects, and we'll select a builder and so forth for that. But the culmination of that project is probably a couple of years away, but we're in the process of developing that now. In any case, it's been approved, and we're moving forward and look forward to that. If you were to ask me, where is it going to be? Don't know the final answer to that at this point. A lot will depend on what the architectural team and others suggest. But as a placeholder, we've been talking about the Catherine Hall, where the international folks just moved in. Yeah. So don't unpack your bags. No, but that's just a placeholder at this point. That might be a possibility to kind of finish out that chapel quad there, but there may be better places. I know that when we talked about the parking structure, for example, we were set on doing it across the street where they're playing tennis right now. And somebody came up with a better idea, forced in part by City Hall, but a better idea that really has worked out much better for us. So don't assume that it's going to go anywhere in particular. We'll just have to wait and see on that. But we're fairly optimistic as we've done evaluation about the potential for gift support for that, and but we'll keep you posted as we go forward. On the Ann Arbor campus, the board has also approved a campaign to remodel the Kreft Center for the Arts, and we're a little further along in this project. Fundraising has included already major gifts, support for that. And so our intention is, if we can secure the rest of the funding, perhaps, Lord willing, to begin the construction of that already this spring, with the goal of having it completed by next fall's 25th anniversary of the dedication of that building. So those of you on the Ann Arbor campus can look forward to that with hope. And I hope it's the kind of hope that's not the I hope so, but maybe not. But we're optimistic about that, and that will be a marvelous campus enhancement along the lines of what we did with the science building a year ago. There are other things that I'm sure you'd be interested in knowing about. You can ask questions about new academic programs that are being considered. There are a number of them that are in various stages of consideration and implementation. Continue to build on the fine ones, obviously, that we have on both campuses already. Also new students, and I always give this appeal every year, and I will again this year because I think it's so important, that first impressions are really, really, really important. And this is my 24th year at Concordia. And some have been at it longer than that, right? Dave, you've seen a few of these start of the school years, and Larry. And for any of you who've been at it for a while, this may seem sort of routine. We're just at a different point in the school year, the rhythm, things are picking up a little bit. We've got to. But think about it from the perspective of those first-time freshmen or their parents. Just before I came, another maybe not quite so remarkable insight that I got from Facebook. Someone had posted a cartoon of, let me try to describe it if I can remember it exactly, but it was two panels. The first panel was a mother who was dragging her son, first day of school, the school bus when he was a little kid, dragging him. He was holding on to a tree, and you could see she's trying to pull him to get him in the school bus. The second panel was the son dragging his mother first day of college. She was just didn't want to let go. And you'll see a little of that this week, won't you, when parents are coming to drop off sons and daughters. Whether it's their first time or the fifth time doesn't really make any difference. My youngest son, I shared with the Ad Council, my youngest son is now a senior. So we've been through this every possible time. It's the fifth child, the senior year. taking him to the airport the other day, that was all right, I guess. It didn't make that much difference. No, it still, it just gets you. It just gets you. And what a neat thing it is for us to be able to be a part of that rite of passage. These first few months are so important for our brand new students. So very important. There'll be a number of them who are homesick, wondering if this is the right place, making up their minds that it's not before we've even had a chance really to interact with them. Others, of course, will do just fine. But let's simply be attentive to all the ways in which we can carry out effective ministry among these first-time students and maybe first-time parents. But the first impression really ought to be just a measure of what is our continuing impression. And that is a reflection of who we are at Concordia, of who we are and what we're all about. And what we're about is hope. So let me revisit that theme just one more time, and then we can address any questions you might have. I hope this is a good year. There will be some hidden blessings. I'm just warning you right now. And you know what I mean now by hidden blessings. We're going to have struggles. We're going to have trials. We're going to have difficulties. St. Peter promised that. We'll have them individually. We'll have them collectively. There's not a person in this room who won't be touched by that. There will be opportunities for us to help and to encourage each other and to direct each other to the Lord's steadfast love, His unending mercy, His great faithfulness. And let's take advantage of that. I mean, that's why we're here. Jesus is raised from the dead. There will also be celebrations, and frankly, we need to celebrate more. I don't know if it's part of a Lutheran ethos that just is uncomfortable with being happy. I don't know what it is, but we need to celebrate more and to not take all the good things that we experience for granted, which I know we don't, but to just celebrate, be a celebrative community. I hope the year goes well, but ours is a hope ultimately that transcends. It transcends the unholy alliance of the devil, the world, the flesh. It's a hope that transcends the challenges of the uncertainties that are revolving around higher education. It's a hope that transcends the challenges of a culture that opposes the Christian worldview, and even a hope that transcends the challenges of a church that loves us so much that sometimes it smothers us in ways that it doesn't really intend to do. But Jesus is raised from the dead, and that's what matters. And we live in that hope every single day. So let me pause now. And Kim, I don't know if you have any questions already lined up. Nobody's biting on that? Okay. Then let's, the group here, if there's anybody in the Venerable Andrew Luptak Terrace room that has a question or would like to know about anything more that I've talked about, probably something I haven't talked about, then let's maybe get that started, and others can weigh in if they choose to by email. Brad. The new mayor? Yeah, and I'll expand that by also talking about our new alderman, too, that has been elected. I think things are really good right now, as a matter of fact. We haven't asked for anything in a long time. Maybe that's part of the reason. But Mayor Abendroth has very publicly endorsed some of the things that are happening on campus. He's enjoyed the Chinooks, which of course was a bone of contention with the neighbors for a long time, that they thought that was going to be a real detriment to the community life. But he comes himself frequently. He suggested to one of our staff anyway that Concordia ought to consider hosting or being the host site for a community 4th of July fireworks event, which might be a good thing. The Chinooks did have a fireworks event this summer and knocked a few things off the wall in my house, so we could do without some of the percussion, I think. But otherwise, it is a nice setting for that. So the mayor, I think the mayor's pretty positive, and then furthermore, the alderman has been very, very intentional about staying closely connected to us and working with us. The proof will be when we have something to raise. Now, we raised the possibility with the mayor, for example, of because we lack indoor athletic space in the wintertime. So we wanted to ask him, just to get a feel, what he would think about a bubble that might go over the soccer field out here. You know, one of those inflatable, but semi-permanent, that could be up all winter long, that would go way beyond the height restrictions and so forth. And he didn't say no. Neither of them said no. They both said, let's talk about it. And so I think it's pretty good right now, but it hasn't really been tested. Al, did you want to say more about that?
I was just going to ask you to comment a little bit about Bethesda.
Okay. Yeah, anything else on the city stuff, let me say about, to jump onto the Bethesda point. Before I do, let me say that for the benefit of those in Ann Arbor, our relationship to City Hall there is also pretty good. I had a chance to sit with Kurt and Al and Cliff as we talked about some projects, and they were a little unhappy with us because in the restoration of the barn there, which was a beautiful job, it looks so much better than it did before. We were, I guess, a bit aggressive in the signage that we used there, and the decals that we used kind of were outside of code. An example of a former mayor, Kurt, strategizing that it would be easier to ask for forgiveness than permission, I think. But we did ask for forgiveness, and they're going to think about it. They haven't had any complaints about it. In fact, everybody's been really happy about how it looks, but we'll see. But the relationship is very good there. It's more complicated in Ann Arbor for a number of reasons. It's a much more cumbersome, slower process, so we have to work way far out in advance with some of the plans that we have in mind there. Regarding Bethesda, Al mentions that we're going to do something new on this campus this year, piloting, hopefully maybe being able to replicate it in Ann Arbor next year. But through a relationship we have with Bethesda Home in Watertown, a request came to see if we would be open to the idea of assisting with some students, with some young people who have either been connected to Bethesda or are otherwise affected by their ministry, who have disabilities of various sorts, typically kind of far along in their capacity, maybe not able to go to college in a way that a traditional student might, but who nevertheless, like any young person, is looking for an opportunity to improve skills and knowledge, to have a vital life, a meaningful life in the world, and who would like to go to college, who have brothers and sisters perhaps who've gone to college, and so in partnership with Bethesda, our School of Education and others have worked very hard to create this program. Bethesda, I forget exactly the title, but Bethesda College at Concordia University, where we're providing housing for 6 students this fall, some programming, RA assistance and so forth. They'll be involved in student life, but Bethesda provides most of the educational experience and whatever certificate they might grant. It's not an academic degree program, but it's a chance for our community to stretch ourselves and to welcome these students as a part of the Concordia family, and to help them to grow and reach goals and have experiences that other kids want to have too. So I think it's going to be very meaningful, and I look forward to it to being a real success. Where are they living? Do you know, Al? Do you know, Joan? They're in Chemnitz. Okay. Yep. What else do you want to talk about?
A question from Ann Arbor. You noted that there are 825 incoming students at CUW, and they're wondering what the CUAA number is for incoming freshmen.
I think that the number is going to be somewhere between 240 and 250 new or transfer students, and that compares very favorably to last year. And I'm sure that the team there feels like that's going to be just the baseline for a big year next year. So we're making good progress. One of the challenges that we've had at Concordia Ann Arbor is that we haven't had a very wide palette of offerings for our students to choose from. And that hasn't changed really all that much. It's changed somewhat. The School of Business has been very aggressive, for example, in adding accents to the business program. But we really need to add new academic programs if we're going to continue to stimulate enrollment growth and retention there. By the way, on the point of retention, and I'm sure, Paul, you'll be able to help us with this as we go along, but May Keller, if you're there, is indicating that our retention statistics in Ann Arbor really are improving quite a bit, and that will be a great enhancement to the total enrollment there. I think we're looking for a total student population in Ann Arbor of around 800 students. Would that be accurate, Al? Around 800 students, which is up from 600 and whatever we had last year, so continued good growth. Thanks for that question from Ann Arbor. Anything else today that you'd like to hear more about, or something, rumors that you've heard or would like to start that you want to discuss? Anything else from Ad Council folks that the group might like to hear that I didn't touch on? Roy? Well, we're still smarting a little from the Super Bowl, but I think the 49ers got a taste this weekend of what the rest of the NFL world should expect. Right now, let's just focus on the Brewers and the Tigers and the Tigers. See, this is so hard. It's like we have 5 kids. You have to treat them all the same. You know? Maybe the Brewers and Tigers could play in the World Series, and that would be fun. By the way, this year the Concordia Invitational Tournament is in Ann Arbor, and so we're looking forward to hosting it this year. Unfortunately, day one pits our women's and our men's teams against each other on the first day, so I'll be wearing purple that day. Very good. Well, you know, I thank you for the blessing that each of you is, and to reiterate that you are my inspiration, and you are, each of you, examples of inspiration and action as we fulfill our mission here, hoping in his faithfulness, renewed each day in hope, mindful of the Lord's steadfast love, his never-ending mercy, and his great faithfulness. So God bless us as we begin this new school year in his name. Thanks.